Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, July 30th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about COVID-19, yet again becoming a very important issue across the nation, with the CDC now recommending that fully vaccinated individuals wear masks indoors in areas of substantial or high transmission. Now, this does not mean that states are going to require masks indoors, but they are now expressed at least it seems from the CDC that this is an option worth taking for some states. And the reason why this has political implications is because COVID-19 very much was a very important issue in the 2020 presidential election, in the Senate elections, in the House elections, in the governor elections, and state legislature elections, amongst others. Now, in the midterms, we did not expect COVID-19 to resurface as an emerging threat to the American public, but it seems to be now more than it was leading up into the holiday season back in 2020. We can actually take a look at what this is actually doing. Right now, in terms of the coronavirus, you can see here on the New York Times new reported cases that we went from a position back at the end of June where we had 11,000 or so cases a day, 11,000 to today, averaging at around 71,000 cases. COVID-19 in just under a month has become a threat that is worth fighting to the fullest extent as it has been in the past. And looking at this, it seemed as if America was beating the pandemic. I mean, we went from a position where we had 250,000 cases. And then as time went on and down and down and down, you can see here that it went from 250,000 cases on a 7-day average down to just 10,000. But now we're back at 70,000, and that's exactly where we were leading into the holiday season, right around the time period in which people were going to visit back home for Thanksgiving, starting to travel around the country, when states started lifting mask mandates because it had gone on for too long, as they put it. You can see here that we weren't around 70,000 cases until right up into the election, October 26th, 2020. And then from then on, it got increasingly worse as the peak started to rise and rise and rise. And then testing occurred, and then we started to see more and more individuals test positive. But then it was at a constant decline. As vaccinations rolled out across the country, the number of cases ultimately declined, but now they're back. And this is why COVID-19 is going to be a very, very important issue for 2022 if this continues to move along. The recommendation that people now who have been exposed to COVID-19 are now to be tested and quarantined for 14 days. If you remember back when they released their first set of guidelines for fully vaccinated individuals, if they were exposed to COVID-19, they were not required or not even recommended to get a test. The CDC said if you were exposed, you could just go about your day and not get tested. Now they are saying because of the Delta variant that they want you to be tested within 3 to 5 days after exposure, known exposure, and wear a mask in public indoor settings for 14 days or until they receive a negative test result. And, while this, didn't mean to say quarantining, meant to say masking up and being very cautious about what they do, regardless of where they are. Now you see here that wearing a mask in public indoor settings is only in areas of substantial or high transmission. If you're wondering how you personally can find out if your county, they do it by county, is in that position, go over to the CDC website, head over to right here, and you can just choose your state. So I'm going to choose my state as an example. I live in Prince George's County. You can see here that you choose the state, and then you just choose Prince George's County. And what does it say? It says that my county has a moderate level of community transmission, which means I do not have to wear a mask indoors. But they might end up being required. Knowing exactly how liberal this state is, it is very possible. But moderate, I would say, low and moderate are the two ones where you do not have to wear a mask indoors. But if it's in substantial, as it is in one other county in the state of Maryland, or high, as it is around the nation, that's when you would want to start wearing it everywhere you go. Indoors, potentially outdoors. It's entirely up to you about that because it is a recommendation, but you might start to see there are increased requirements because of the community transmission levels being extremely high. So you can start to see here that states and cities, including Washington, D.C., are bringing back mask mandates. The reason why They want to prevent the Delta variant from impacting those who are unvaccinated and even those who are vaccinated. This holds a lot of political implications. This will raise questions for the left wing and the right wing. Looking around the nation, if you're in a state that is heavily vaccinated, such as New York, where 61% of the population is fully vaccinated, that's 61% of the total population, or Vermont, where 73% of the total population is vaccinated, you ask them and you say, you are all vaccinated, yet you might have a mask mandate imposed in your state. How do you feel about that? How do you feel that you might have to wear masks again? And for the majority of people who are vaccinated, I'm sure that they wouldn't care. But there are that subsection of people who say, I no longer want to wear one. I've played my part. I wore a mask the entire time, got vaccinated, and here we are punished because unvaccinated individuals do not want to get vaccinated and thus are much more likely to be hospitalized, to die, to be impacted by the Delta variant. Today we found out from the New York Times that the Delta variant is just as transmissible as chickenpox. I mean, I kid you not, this Delta variant is ravaging across the nation as we speak, with over 80% of the new cases that variant. When you heard about variants, you were talking about maybe just a small subsection of the population having them. This is now the dominant COVID strain, and it is by far, as it seems to be, the most impactful for hospitalizations, for deaths, for transmission in the United States to date. Yet the only real people who will be impacted heavily by the Delta variant are those who are unvaccinated. But it does raise questions for the Democratic Party, saying that Joe Biden and Democratic governors and others had imposed the mask, who had imposed vaccines on people and said, you need to get vaccinated. Even some Republican governors who are now trying to convince people to get vaccinated. We just heard from Kay Ivey that she has called this the fault of unvaccinated individuals. You are starting to see these politicians on the left and the right, but primarily the left, who said to get vaccinated, but now the mask mandates might return. But then that also raises questions for the right wing and says, because of these unvaccinated individuals in primarily Republican states, I mean, if you're looking at the 2016 election results, you will find a direct comparison, if you were to apply the numbers, of individuals in which the population, 70% or more of the population has received one dose, 18 plus population. You will see that every single state that has the population 70% with a single dose or more, every single one of those states voted for Hillary Clinton except for Pennsylvania. Every one of the other states that isn't in that classification voted for Donald Trump except for Nevada. Just keep that in mind. Vaccines are something that the left wing, and the more so the Democratic Party, promised would return us to a sense of normalcy. Now the Republican Party seems to be entirely on board with such a notion. But these returning mask mandates could prove to be detrimental towards Democrats, but also Republicans. Because if COVID-19 becomes an issue in which the majority of Americans are fine with masking back up, even though they may be vaccinated, are fine with being in a position where COVID-19 is the new normal for the foreseeable future until more people get vaccinated, that will start to raise the question again, how do you approve of Joe Biden's response to the coronavirus crisis? How do you feel Joe Biden has done in terms of handling the pandemic? The pandemic will continue, and based off the Delta variant numbers now, I could honestly see it expanding onto at least the end of 2021. This pandemic could have gone away had more people gotten vaccinated. I have been vaccinated for months. All of my friends have been vaccinated. I don't have many friends who have not received the vaccine, and I have actively tried and am trying to ensure that they get vaccinated. But for the rest of America, I mean, we are in positions where we are surrounded constantly by unvaccinated individuals, but you have to ask the question, why? I can tell you from personal experience that I did not have any side effects. I received Pfizer 3 weeks apart. I was fully vaccinated 2 weeks after that. I'm telling you now, it is so worth getting. It is so worth getting the vaccine. Having that sense of security with the coronavirus. I mean, yes, there is a high survival rate, but somebody has to be unlucky. Somebody has to be a part of that subsection. And I can also tell you that it is not just a question of those who are personally vulnerable. I mean, I know people that have gotten very poor symptoms, bad symptoms from COVID-19 that were on my swim team, that played lacrosse at my high school, people who received or contracted COVID-19 twice, 3, 4 months apart, and yet to this day have long-lasting effects because of COVID-19. This vaccine is 100% worth getting. If any of you guys are unvaccinated, please go get vaccinated. I understand that there may be some questions, but I can tell you now, 168 million Americans are not going to be all having the same detrimental effects from this vaccine. This is not some type of mass conspiracy on the part of the government. Just when every government across the nation is focused on one pandemic, the vaccine will come much quicker than they are looking at other things that may not necessarily be as pressing to individual countries, especially countries such as the United States. But if the pandemic proves to be continuing on, this will benefit the Democratic Party. Because right now, the handling of the coronavirus is one of the main reasons as to why Joe Biden is viewed so popularly. The reason why his approval rating has remained above water is because of the way he's approved on the economy and handling the virus itself. I mean, you can see here that 29% more Americans approve of the way he's handling the coronavirus, yet his net approval seems to be around plus 8%. That means there is a significant portion of the public who views him handling the coronavirus positively, but not anything else positively, which means that this is the last thing that Joe Biden has for many Americans as to whether or not he is being a good president, and likely crosses over many people into approving of him altogether if they view the coronavirus as a very important issue. And now, with the pandemic seemingly resurfacing in a much bigger fashion with this Delta variant, this will only continue to help the Democrats. If there's an issue of stimulus checks again, if we go back into lockdowns, while some states are saying absolutely not, we are not going back into mask mandates. We are not going back into different, back into wearing masks across the nation. Usually speaking, though, these are states with low vaccination rates in terms of, each individual state. These are typically also states which have high COVID-19 numbers, such as Missouri or Louisiana or Arkansas. I mean, you can look around this map. A lot of blue states barely have any reported cases. I mean, you're talking about this northeastern section, and then you have parts of the Rust Belt with some areas having high levels of vaccines. I mean, Michigan, which was one of the worst places in the country for COVID-19 back in October, November 2020, now seems to be one of the best states for COVID-19. But it seems that the South has been hit really hard, and primarily in Republican areas, all across Arkansas, all across Missouri, pouring into states such as Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas and Florida, even some Democratic states from 2020, Georgia, or competitive states such as North Carolina. But the point being that COVID-19 is still a pressing threat. And if more states start to go into positions where people can no longer return to work, where people might need stimulus checks, it's very clear that from the beginning of the year up until now, only the Democratic Party supports more stimulus checks for COVID-19. That could instantly boost their popularity, as well as help out Americans if we are in a position where there is an additional lockdown, and thus could bring the Democrats more votes. Everything in America is politicized and has been politicized, including the COVID-19 vaccine and the coronavirus mask mandates. But with the CDC's new recommendations, it seems as if more states might be inclined to impose mask mandates again, regardless of vaccination status. While there will be that question of concern from vaccinated individuals about the fairness of such treatment towards vaccinated people, saying that they must wear masks in order to protect those who are unvaccinated or to reduce the risk of transmission of the Delta variant, there is also a lot more concern about whether or not the virus itself is being handled efficiently. And if we see these numbers, which were much lower, and then you start to see the politicians who encouraged vaccines, primarily on the Democratic side, pretty much being right about the dramatic and rapid rise of COVID-19 across the nation, I mean, that's when you would start to see in this position where, okay, hold on a second, maybe it is right that this portion of America, this part of the left wing, was right to treat the virus very seriously, to continue waiting on whether or not they would fully lift the mask mandates. Americans will have plenty of concerns and plenty of questions as the virus starts to become much more rampant across the United States. But 99% of these tests positive are from people who are unvaccinated. 99% of hospitalizations and deaths are from people who are unvaccinated. The vaccine clearly works, but this pandemic has truly become the pandemic of the unvaccinated. And the CDC is now encouraging those who are vaccinated to play their parts yet again and try to prevent the transmission of the Delta variant, which raises concerns about whether or not the coronavirus will really dissipate into a nothing burger by the end of the year, or whether it will continue into 2022 as a primary threat and an important issue for Americans all around the country. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 midterm election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.